So amid the raging war in the Middle East, oil prices have now surged past $100 per barrel, and this has happened for the first time since 2022. Now, the global benchmark Brent Crude has touched a high of 119.50 per barrel, the US dollars that we speak of, and this is a spike of nearly 95% when compared to the prices at the start of the year. Let's explain you the figures that have been coming in detail. Exactly what does it mean when we speak of the Brent crude prices? Now, on the 2nd of January, as we're looking at the figures, it stood at $60.05 per barrel. January 7th, it further lowered to $59.81. And here, when it comes to the first week of March, the first week of the conflict, it shot up to $119.50 US dollars per barrel that we are now looking at as far as the prices are concerned. Now, Donald Trump has now hinted as easing oil sanctions. Now, will this now come across as a relief? Because President Trump says that Washington may temporarily waive certain oil-related sanctions to help reduce global prices. He, however, has also warned that if required, that the U.S. Navy and its partners would escort oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz to ensure a safe passage. Now, this development has been coming at a time when nearly 20% of the world supply that actually uses the route of Strait of Hormuz have been halted. They have been impacted.
Waiving certain oil-related sanctions to reduce prices. So we have sanctions on some countries. We're going to take those sanctions off till this straightens out. Then who knows, maybe we won't have to put them on. There'll be so much peace. But when the time comes, the U.S. Navy and its partners will escort tankers through the strait if needed. I hope it's not going to be needed, but if it's needed, we'll escort them right through. And we have the greatest mine-sweeping ability. We have the greatest ships and we know exactly where they're placed. We'll get them out of there very fast, but we hope we don't have any of that. And again, if they do that, if they play that game, we're going to hit them at a level that they have not seen before.
Srinjoy, good morning. Again, multiple statements coming in from President Trump, because yesterday he said that even when it comes to skyrocketing oil prices, that is a small price to pay when it comes to achieving global peace. However, this is the kind of similar waiver that seems to be announcing for India that he seems to have given for 30 days, probably to other countries as well.
Yes, first of all, America itself produces a lot of oil. So America is not a country that will be enormously affected by high oil prices. It may be to an extent, but not to, like, say, India or other countries like China. So that's really one. He's spoken about two things. He didn't mention any countries by name, but he said he could lift sanctions. The sanctions that affect India the most are really the sanctions on two Russian firms. Now, because of those two firms getting sanctioned, the Indian private sector oil purchasers cannot buy that oil to refine and even sell to America. So the whole point is, if those two sanctioned Russian firms get a reprieve, then very clearly India will benefit. India will be able to buy huge amounts of Russian oil, like before. But the question is, will President Trump do it? Because in the past, he had sanctioned these two firms. Now, he has said he will lift sanctions, but he hasn't said sanctions on whom. So that's really a question that remains unanswered. Secondly, he's talked about the U.S. Navy escorting ships, tankers through the Gulf of Hormuz.
Yes.
Now, that's a very welcome step. But the question is, while it is welcome, while the Americans is a big navy, very effective navy, with mine-sweeping capabilities, as he said, the question is, even with escorts, even if there are attacks, whether it's drone attacks, whether it's shore batteries, we don't know. But if there are attacks, are the merchant ships, are the oil tankers going to go through? Will they risk
Well,
going
because
through?
this dare that has already been given on Iran's side, as they have been saying that if any oil tanker passes through the Strait of Hormuz, which is turned into a virtual chokehold that would be set ablaze, that would be attacked. However, this is a risk that many, as far as when it comes to the insurers that are also concerned and are unwilling to take, because nearly 20% of the global supply has now been affected. As Srinjoy continues to be with us, we talk more about the skyrocketing oil prices, because that comes from that very narrow Strait of Hormuz, which the world's most critical oil arteries has now been closed for about a week. Now, about 1/5 of the global oil shipments that pass through this narrow choke point, and according to reports, the prolonged conflict has created a potential supply deficit of nearly 15 to 20 million barrels per day globally. Because that's not all. The oil depots that are also now being struck by Iran across the Middle East. First in the Gulf and now in Iran itself. Now, these are the countries that are amongst the biggest exporters of crude oil to the world. And the attacks on energy infrastructure is only further complicating the matters when it comes to the global oil markets. Let's take a look as far as these figures are concerned. When we speak of the Middle East top oil exporters. So topping the charts, we're looking at Saudi Arabia of nearly $187 billion as far as when it comes to the export is concerned. We are looking at next at the UAE, $114 billion US dollars, Iraq with $98 billion and followed by Iran with $47 billion. Also coming in other countries in the Gulf that include Kuwait, Oman and also Qatar. Now, as far as